A rumor had started like a soft breeze moving through the palm trees, barely noticeable at first, then slowly gaining weight as it passed from one mouth to another. They said there was a treasure hidden deep beneath the old king's ruins, gold buried long ago by an exiled ruler who vanished without a trace. Some villagers laughed when they heard it, shaking their heads and calling it nothing more than a drunken tale. Others shrugged, too busy with their farms, their children, their everyday survival to care about ghost stories of wealth. Most ignored it completely. But not Amina. Amina, at 27, walked through the village with the kind of presence that made people pause. She had sharp, expressive eyes, a beauty that needed no decorations, and a mind quick enough to solve problems before others even noticed there was one. She was respected, admired, and sometimes feared for her stubbornness. Yet even with all her gifts, there was something quietly restless inside her, something that whispered that she was meant for more than the simple life the village offered. When the rumor reached her, it did not pass by like it did with everyone else. It rooted itself deep in her heart. At first she only thought about it lightly, almost playfully. A treasure? Hidden by a king? It sounded like one of those stories told to children around the fire. She even smiled when the storyteller mentioned it during an evening gathering. But later, lying in her small hut, staring at the ceiling as moonlight slipped through the cracks, she found herself wondering, what if it were true? What if that treasure existed just waiting for someone brave enough, or foolish enough, to find it? Curiosity, nothing more, she told herself. But curiosity turned into something heavier. Days passed and she caught herself thinking about the ruins more often. She walked near them, pretending she was merely passing through, though her eyes scanned every rock, every broken wall, every shadow. The wind seemed to whisper secrets when she stood there alone. She imagined chests overflowing with gold coins, jewels shining like captured stars, crowns fit for rulers. Wealth so great it could change everything. She began to picture herself differently, clothed in fine fabrics, walking with authority, people parting for her wherever she passed. She imagined buying land, building a grand house, lifting her family out of poverty, and proving to every person who ever doubted her that she was destined for greatness. Desire grew quickly like a fire catching dry grass. Soon she wasn't just imagining the treasure, she was planning how she would find it. She spent hours talking to elders, pretending to ask about history and legends, but secretly gathering pieces of information. She memorized every detail of the old king's story, every rumor about where he might have hidden his riches. She sketched crude maps in the dirt, then erased them before anyone could see. At night she dreamed of gold. In her dreams she reached out to grab handfuls of coins, but they slipped like sand through her fingers. Still, she woke excited, breath quick, heart already racing with ambition. Each dream pushed her deeper into obsession. Her mother noticed the change before anyone else. "You walk around like your soul is somewhere else," she told her. Amina only smiled tightly. "Just thinking," she replied. "Thinking?" No. She was sinking. Her greed began almost softly, like a knock she could have ignored. But day by day the knock grew louder. Why shouldn't you have it? Why shouldn't you rise above everyone else? Why should your life stay ordinary when greatness is within reach? These thoughts wrapped around her until she could barely breathe without thinking of what lay waiting beneath the old stones. One evening as she walked back from the river, a group of villagers sat talking about the rumor again. Most dismissed it with laughter. "Even if there is treasure," one man said, "it is cursed. These things never bring peace." "Let fools chase it," another added, waving his hand. "No good comes from disturbing the past." Amina quietly listened from the shadows, her jaw tightening. Fools? She didn't see herself as a fool. She saw herself as the one person bold enough to succeed where others were too afraid to try. The more they doubted, the stronger her determination grew. Their fear only convinced her that she deserved to be above them, that she alone had the strength to claim what they would never dare reach for. One night she stood near the ruins, staring at the broken stones glowing pale in the moonlight. The place felt silent, ancient, watching her. She placed her hand on a cracked pillar, imagining the king who once ruled here, imagining him carrying his treasure deep underground, hiding it with rituals and symbols no one could decipher. Amina felt a strange energy, a pull as if the land itself was whispering her name. "You were meant to find it," she murmured to herself. "You were meant for more." Greed settled into her bones as quietly as a shadow, subtle at first, then undeniable. What started as curiosity had become desire. Desire became hunger. Hunger became obsession. And obsession became something darker. Desperation, that dangerous force that convinces a person that nothing is too risky, too foolish, too sinful if it brings them what they want. From that moment, Amina no longer walked through the village like everyone else. She walked like someone carrying a secret. Someone chasing a destiny. Someone whose heart had begun to tilt toward darkness, step by step, without even realizing how far she was wandering from the path she once knew. The treasure was no longer a rumor to her. It was a promise. A promise she was ready to destroy herself for. The old blind storyteller sat beneath the giant baobab tree every evening, legs folded, his faded cloth spread beneath him like a small island of wisdom. Children gathered around him, adults paused on their way home from the fields, and travelers stopped to listen to his voice, deep, steady, and touched with something ancient. His stories were not just entertainment, they were warnings, memories, and truths wrapped in legend. Amina had grown up listening to him, but she rarely took his lessons seriously. She believed life was shaped by ambition, not old tales. But on this particular evening, as she walked past him, lost in her dangerous thoughts of treasure, his voice drifted toward her with unusual weight. "I hear her footsteps," he said suddenly, his head lifting slightly. "The girl whose spirit trembles." Amina froze mid-step. She tried to pretend she didn't know he was speaking of her, but something in his tone made her approach him. "You talk as if you see me," she said gently, sitting a short distance from him. He smiled with milky eyes that saw far more than sighted ones ever could. "Child, blindness frees a person to see what others hide. And your heart," he paused, feeling the air as if touching its texture. "Your heart is racing after something that will not bless you." Amina stiffened. "You're talking about the treasure." A soft sigh escaped the old man. "Ah, so it has already wrapped its chain around your mind." She didn't appreciate his concern, she felt judged, cornered. "It is just a rumor," she said carelessly, even though they both knew she no longer believed that. The storyteller leaned closer, his voice dropping like a whisper carried by the wind. "Child, that treasure has destroyed stronger hearts than yours." Amina felt irritation prick her skin. Destroyed? Or perhaps they were too weak to handle what they found. Even the children noticed her tone. They stared at her with wide eyes, knowing she had spoken boldly, too boldly. But the old man only tilted his head sadly. "Pride speaks before wisdom does. Listen to me carefully. Many have gone into those ruins over the years. Young men full of dreams. Mothers trying to save their families, outcasts wanting to return with honor. None of them ever came back whole. Some returned with shattered minds. Some didn't return at all." She felt a cold flutter in her chest, but she pushed it down with stubbornness. "Maybe they searched in the wrong place," she muttered. The old man lifted a finger, trembling but steady with emphasis. "Maybe they should never have searched at all." His words hung in the air like smoke, thick, unavoidable, choking. But Amina refused to let them sink into her heart. She stood abruptly. "Old stories don't scare me," she said, brushing dust from her hands. "Maybe you should tell tales of success for once." "Young one," he replied softly, "greed grows louder than wisdom. And when it does, death listens." Amina walked away before he finished, her jaw tightened in defiance. She hated how his words made her feel, small, reckless, childish. She preferred her dreams to his warnings. But the storyteller wasn't the only one trying to reach her. Later that night, Amina's best friend, Safia, visited her hut carrying a lantern. Safia was gentle, warm-hearted, with a voice that calmed storms. She and Amina had shared everything since childhood: meals, secrets, laughter, pain. If anyone truly understood Amina, it was her. "Amina, we need to talk," Safia said, stepping inside. The dim lantern light revealed worry etched across her face. Amina rolled her eyes. "Don't tell me you've come to talk about that treasure rumor again." Safia sat down heavily. "I didn't want to believe it, but people are talking. They say you've been asking questions, spending time near the ruins." "And if I am?" Amina challenged. Safia exhaled shakily. "Amina, please. Don't go down this path." Amina turned away, annoyed. "You sound like the storyteller." "Then maybe you should listen," Safia pleaded. "You know what happened to Juma's uncle, don't you? He went looking for the king's treasure when we were children. His family said he came back saying he heard voices underground. He couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. He wandered into the forest one day and never returned." "That's just gossip," Amina snapped. Safia leaned forward, her voice trembling. "And what about Mama Chail? She lost her son the same way. And the fisherman who thought he found the king's map? They found him near the river, speaking nonsense." Amina's face tightened. She didn't want to hear these stories. They were chains threatening to hold her down. You don't understand, she said sharply. This treasure could change everything. My life, my family's life. Amina, Safia interrupted gently, your life is not in danger now. Why put it in danger for something that might not be real? Amina felt heat rise in her chest. Because I'm tired, Safia. Tired of seeing others rise while I stay stuck. Tired of dreaming small. This treasure could be my chance. Safia reached for her hand. Not every chance leads to light. Some lead to darkness. And greed, she paused, her voice barely a whisper. Greed doesn't just blind you. It takes you. Amina jerked her hand away. I'm not greedy. I'm ambitious. Safia shook her head sadly. Ambition lifts you. Greed eats you. Those words unsettled Amina more than she wanted to admit. She crossed her arms, staring at the floor, unwilling to meet her friend's eyes. Safia watched her for a long moment before standing. If you continue with this, I fear I'll lose you, she said quietly. Those words struck something deep, but Amina refused to let her emotions win. She forced a laugh, cold and hollow. You won't lose me. I know what I'm doing. Safia's eyes glistened with unshed tears. No, you don't. And that's what scares me. When Safia left, the silence inside the hut felt heavier than any warning. Amina lay awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to shake off their words. But her mind kept returning to the treasure, the gold, the imagined glory. Every warning felt like an attempt to keep her small. She told herself she wasn't being foolish, she was being brave. She wasn't ignoring wisdom, she was refusing fear. But deep inside, something darker whispered the truth. She wasn't rising. She was falling. And her greed had already begun to close her ears to every voice that tried to save her. Amina had spent weeks preparing for her venture to the ruins. Each morning before dawn, she would gather her tools, shovels, pickaxes, old lanterns she had borrowed or bought with secret coins, and make her way toward the broken stones that marked the exiled king's abandoned fortress. The village was still asleep when she slipped away, the first rays of sunlight brushing the horizon in pale gold, almost as if the day itself hesitated to rise over the ruins she sought to conquer. The first day went smoothly enough. She dug lightly around the edges, testing the soil, marking spots she thought might conceal an entrance. But as she pressed deeper into the earth, a sense of unease crept over her. Her hands were steady, her muscles strong, yet every time she swung her pickaxe, it hit something unyielding. Stones cracked and splintered in odd ways, but her tools that had never failed her before, began to break. Handles splintered in her grip, edges dulled as though the metal itself were resisting her. She cursed under her breath, a thrill of anger rising alongside a strange flicker of fear. By the second day, the birds that usually filled the trees around the ruins with song had fallen silent. Amina noticed it immediately. Where normally morning would greet her with the cheerful chirping of sparrows and the melodic cooing of doves, there was nothing. Only the occasional rustle of dry leaves stirred by a breeze that seemed colder than the morning air warranted. She shook her head, blaming herself for imagining it, but even the squirrels seemed to avoid the ruins. A heavy quiet hung over the place, and every sound she made, footsteps in the dirt, the scrape of her shovel, echoed back at her like a warning. Then the wind came. Not the normal gusts of air that moved through the trees, but a cold, biting breeze that seemed to follow her wherever she walked. She could feel it against her neck, slipping under her hair, chilling her skin even in the heat of midday. It carried a faint scent, metallic and ancient, that made her stomach turn. Amina tried to shake it off, telling herself it was just the wind, just her imagination running wild. Yet every time she paused, the wind seemed to swirl around her, whispering as if it knew her thoughts, mocking her desire, reminding her of the danger she had chosen to embrace. By the fourth day, sleep offered no comfort. Her dreams turned dark, twisted, and terrifying. She found herself trapped in the ruins at night, the walls closing in around her, and the treasure she so desperately craved suddenly transformed into living hands made of solid gold. They reached for her, clawing at her throat, fingers curling around her neck with a weight she could not lift. She would wake gasping, her sheets tangled around her limbs, sweat soaking her hair. She told herself these were only dreams, nothing more than fears of failure, but the nightmares grew more vivid each night, as if the treasure itself had become alive and angry. Despite every warning the ruins seemed to offer, Amina did not stop. She did not run, she did not retreat, she did not pray. Instead, she became more determined. The broken tools were replaced, the cold wind was endured, the silence of the birds ignored, and she forced herself to sleep with trembling hands, knowing the dreams awaited her. Each strange occurrence only fueled her obsession. Every shattered pickaxe became proof that the treasure was close, every silent tree a sign that she was special, chosen to find what others could not. The fifth day brought more disturbing signs. She uncovered a jagged stone, etched with symbols she did not understand. As she brushed away the dirt, the marks seemed to shimmer under her touch, faintly glowing as if alive. A sudden gust of wind knocked her backward, scattering the loose soil around her. Amina scrambled to her feet, heart pounding, and felt an inexplicable thrill run through her veins. Whatever was in the ruins, she thought it was aware of her. It watched her. And she was not afraid. She was ready. By the seventh day, even the villagers began whispering rumors about her. They said they saw her at the ruins at night, lanterns flickering in the darkness, and that sometimes the ground near her seemed to tremble. Mothers kept their children inside, and elders shook their heads, warning one another that obsession always led to ruin. Amina heard the whispers but paid them no mind. Each murmur, each wary glance, each fearful gaze only confirmed that she was on the right path. The treasure had to be near. If it were not, the world would not react so strongly to her pursuit. At night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling of her hut, replaying the visions of golden hands gripping her throat. She could feel the weight of them even when awake, a pressure in her chest and neck that made her shiver. The dreams no longer terrified her, they excited her. She understood, on some twisted level, that the treasure wanted her. It had tested her, and now the real challenge awaited. She tightened her jaw, tracing her fingers over the rough wood of her bed frame, and whispered, "I will not fail. I will have it no matter what." Every day the ruins seemed to grow darker, older, more insistent. Shadows shifted in ways that made her stomach churn, stones seemed to move when she looked away, and the wind continued its cold pursuit. Yet Amina embraced every strange sign as a confirmation of her destiny. The curse, she decided in the moments of clarity between fear and obsession, was nothing more than a test. The treasure belonged to her, and she would endure anything the ruins threw at her. By the end of the week she was fully immersed. Dirt caked her hair, her fingers were blistered and raw, and her eyes had dark circles from sleepless nights haunted by visions of gold and grasping hands. Yet when she looked at the ruins she did not see danger. She saw opportunity. She did not see curses or omens. She saw her future, glittering, powerful, untouchable. She could feel it in her bones, a certainty that pushed aside every fear, every strange occurrence, every nightmare. The first signs of the curse had come, and instead of fleeing, she ran toward them, faster, hungrier, more obsessed than ever. The ruins, the wind, the silence, the nightmares, they all bowed to her desire. And Amina, blind to the warnings etched in the world around her, believed herself unstoppable. Amina had changed in ways that the villagers noticed with growing unease. She was no longer the bright, cheerful woman who laughed easily and shared her life with those around her. Now her eyes held a cold intensity, a sharpness that cut through anyone who dared question her. Every thought, every movement, every breath seemed consumed by the treasure she chased. And as her obsession grew, so too did her willingness to betray those who had once loved her. The first act of betrayal came quietly, almost imperceptibly. Her mother, a woman of gentle hands and quiet smiles, had a small collection of gold and silver jewelry, inherited from ancestors and carefully preserved through the years. One evening, under the dim lantern light of their hut, Amina asked to borrow it. Her mother, suspicious but trusting, handed over the delicate pieces. She believed her daughter intended to wear them to a festival or perhaps sell a few trinkets for small comforts. She did not know Amina's plan. By the next morning the jewelry was gone. Amina had traded it for laborers, strong, rough men who would help her dig deeper into the ruins than she could manage alone. She watched them work, muscles straining in the harsh sunlight, spades cutting into the soil, stones breaking apart under their relentless hands. Every coin, every gold chain, every ring she had taken from her mother felt like a step closer to her destiny. She told herself it was for the greater good, that her family would be rewarded once the treasure was hers. In her mind, the end justified the means. But the lies did not stop there. Amina had a younger sister, little Amira, bright-eyed and trusting. She often followed Amina around the village, clinging to her words, believing in her promises. One afternoon as they sat by the river, Amira asked, "Will you share it with me if you find the treasure?" Amina smiled, forcing warmth into her voice that she did not feel. "Of course, little one. You will have more than anyone in the village," she said, watching Amira's eyes light up with hope. Inside she laughed silently. Sharing was the last thing she intended. The treasure belonged to her alone, and no promise, no matter how heartfelt, would stop her from keeping it all. Her best friend, Safia, remained the only person brave enough to confront her. One evening as Amina returned from the ruins, covered in dirt and sweat, Safia grabbed her arm. "Amina, stop this. You're destroying yourself and everyone who cares about you." Amina yanked her arm away, her voice sharp and bitter. "I am not destroying anyone. I am claiming what is rightfully mine." "You're lying to your sister," Safia shouted, tears welling in her eyes. "You sold your mother's jewelry. You've hurt everyone who loves you." Amina's face twisted with anger. "I don't care. Do you think I will be remembered as weak? Do you think the world will care that I was loyal to everyone? No. I will have the treasure, and I will rise above everyone who doubted me." Safia's hands shook as she reached for her again, desperate. "Amina, this is not ambition. This is greed. You're blinded and you don't even see what you've become." "I see perfectly well," Amina hissed. "I see the only path to power, and I will not step aside for anyone." The confrontation ended with Safia leaving, heartbroken, and Amina standing alone in her hut, the darkness pressing against her as if celebrating her victory. She felt no guilt, no regret, only the burning need to reach the treasure before anything or anyone could stop her. Days turned into weeks, and with each passing day, Amina's greed isolated her further. Villagers whispered about her with fearful awe. Even her mother avoided her gaze, sensing the change but unable to confront it. Amira clung less to her sister, confusion and hurt replacing the innocent trust she once held. Amina's relationships were crumbling, yet she walked through the village with her head held high, convinced that those who truly mattered would eventually understand once the treasure was hers. Every lie, every betrayal, every act of selfishness became a brick in the wall she was building between herself and the world. She stopped visiting neighbors, ignored requests for help, and spoke only to those who could further her goals. The men digging at the ruins respected her authority, but even they noticed the cold, relentless hunger in her eyes, a hunger that made them uneasy. At night, alone in her hut, Amina would sit with her maps and sketches, her hands trembling with excitement. She imagined the treasure, gold spilling into her arms, jewels glittering in the lantern light, and she would laugh softly at the thought of everyone else's astonishment. Her mother, her sister, Safia, they were nothing in comparison to what awaited her. She told herself that they would understand eventually, that the treasure would make her life, and theirs, better. In truth, she barely thought of them at all. Even when nightmares returned, showing her the golden hands clutching her throat, the visions no longer frightened her. She had embraced the darkness, the obsession, the single-minded pursuit of wealth. Every betrayal felt justified, every lie necessary. Amina's world had shrunk to the ruins, the treasure, and the men who dug tirelessly for her. Nothing else mattered, not love, not friendship, not family. Greed had consumed her entirely. It was no longer a quiet whisper in her heart. It roared like the storms that swept through the village during the rains. It told her that power was everything, that the treasure would crown her life with glory, and that those who had once warned her, loved her, or walked beside her were merely obstacles to be overcome. And Amina, eyes blazing with relentless ambition, welcomed the solitude, the fear, and the destruction, for they were the price of the prize she was certain she would claim. The night was unusually still, the kind of stillness that presses against the ears and sets the nerves on edge. Amina moved quietly through the ruins, her lantern casting long, wavering shadows over the broken stones and crumbling walls. The full moon hung high above, pale and commanding, bathing the land in silver light. Its glow reflected off the scattered rocks, guiding her steps toward the spot she had marked days ago, the place where she felt the treasure call to her the loudest. Her hands trembled, though she tried to steady them. Weeks of digging, sleepless nights, and relentless obsession had left her body weary, but her heart raced faster than it ever had. Every sound of shifting stones, every rustle of leaves, every distant hoot of an owl made her pulse spike. Yet she pressed forward, a strange mixture of fear and exhilaration tightening in her chest. She had dreamed of this moment, imagined it endlessly, and now it was real, just beyond her grasp. Finally, her lantern illuminated a portion of the ground she had overlooked before. The soil was softer here, as if it had been waiting for her. She dropped to her knees, brushing away the dirt with trembling fingers. Her heart skipped when she uncovered the edge of a stone slab, darker and smoother than the surrounding rock. She pressed against it and it shifted slightly under her weight. Her breath caught. It was a door, an actual door buried underground, perfectly preserved despite the years. She traced the carved symbols along its surface, feeling the grooves with awe. There was no hesitation now. Her hand shook as she pressed her palm to the stone, pushing with all the strength her arms could muster. Inch by inch, it moved, grinding against centuries of soil and secrets. The door opened with a low, rumbling groan, revealing darkness so deep it seemed to swallow the light of her lantern. A cold, damp air rose from within, carrying the scent of earth and something ancient, metallic and almost sweet. She swallowed hard, her throat tight, heart pounding so violently she thought it might burst. She had come this far, risked everything, and now the moment had arrived. Amina lowered herself carefully into the passageway, the walls cold and rough against her hands. She could hear her own breathing, sharp and uneven, and the distant echo of dripping water somewhere deep below. The air seemed to thrum with energy, as though it recognized her presence and responded with a quiet, almost imperceptible hum. Her lantern illuminated a stairway carved from stone, leading downward. Step by step, she descended, each footfall shaking slightly under the weight of anticipation. At the bottom, she found herself in a chamber unlike anything she had imagined. The walls glimmered faintly as if embedded with tiny fragments of gold, and the floor was dusted with a fine layer of sand that reflected the lantern's glow like scattered starlight. And there, in the center of the room, rested a chest. Amina froze. Her breath caught in her throat. The chest was massive, old but impeccably preserved, its surface carved with ornate patterns that hinted at a majesty long forgotten. She knelt before it, hands hovering above the lock, fingers shaking uncontrollably. Then, summoning every ounce of courage and greed, she lifted the lid. Inside lay a treasure beyond imagination. Gold coins piled high like miniature mountains, jewels that sparkled in the lantern light with every color of the rainbow, crowns encrusted with rubies and emeralds, necklaces that seemed spun from sunlight itself. The sheer magnitude of it stole her words. She reached out, fingers trembling, and touched the coins. They were cold, heavy, real. The jewels cut into her palms, their facets sharp and alive with light. Her pulse raced, her heart nearly bursting with triumph. She had done it. She had found the treasure. All the nights of digging, all the betrayals, all the obsession, it had led to this. Her hand brushed against a golden chalice encrusted with sapphires. She lifted it, the metal warm and smooth beneath her fingers. The thought of all she could achieve, all she could become, surged through her like fire. She could hear the echoes of the villagers' disbelief, see the look of astonishment on her mother's face, feel the awe her sister would feel when she finally revealed it. All of it belonged to her. Her mind whirled with plans, dreams, and ambitions, and yet a strange shiver ran down her spine. She paused, staring into the chest as if sensing the weight of what she held. It was beautiful, powerful, irresistible, but it also seemed alive in a way she had not expected. The gold glimmered almost with a heartbeat, the jewels sparkled as though breathing beneath the lantern light, and for a fleeting moment she thought she saw movement in the shadows of the chamber. Amina shook her head, dismissing it. Fear had no place here. She reached deeper into the chest, running her fingers through the piles of coins, touching each jewel, each crown, each priceless artifact. She imagined herself lifting it all, carrying it back to the village, and finally claiming the life she had long believed was hers by right. She did not notice the faint hum that began to rise from the chest, the almost imperceptible vibration in the air. She did not hear the subtle whisper that seemed to slip along the walls, calling her name softly, insistently. She only felt triumph, exhilaration, and a greed so consuming that it drowned out every other thought. Finally she leaned back, chest heaving, eyes wide with wonder. The treasure was real. The treasure was hers. All the obstacles, all the warnings, all the fears, they had led her here. She had conquered everything to reach this moment, and nothing she believed could stand in her way. Her hands rested on the golden coins, shaking, trembling, almost as if the treasure itself were responding to her touch. And in that moment, Amina could not imagine life without it, could not imagine a single thing more powerful than the wealth before her. She had crossed the line from desire to possession, and nothing would ever be the same. The treasure was hers and she would not let it go. The gold in Amina's hands felt impossibly heavy, glowing with a heat that was not merely from the treasure's ancient magic but from the anger it carried. For a brief, ecstatic moment she thought she had conquered it. But then the warmth intensified, burning her palms, searing through her skin like liquid fire. She screamed, dropping the coin, but it did not fall. Instead, it began to disintegrate in her hands, crumbling into tiny, glowing particles that hissed and sparkled like embers. The coins, jewels, and crowns melted into a burning sand that poured through her fingers, scorching her skin and leaving trails of smoke curling up into the chamber's darkness. Amina staggered backward, clutching her hands to her face, her skin blistered and raw. Panic surged through her. "No, no," she shouted, desperate to grab the treasure, but every piece she touched turned to ash. The wealth she had dreamed of, schemed for, and betrayed her family to obtain was slipping through her fingers, consumed by a power far greater than her greed. The sand burned her, bit into her flesh, and yet she could not let go, unwilling to accept defeat. Then came the first tremor, a deep rumble that rolled through the chamber like thunder trapped underground. Dust fell from the ceiling, tiny stones rattling like rain, but the trembling escalated rapidly. The ground shook violently, the walls cracking, sending chunks of stone crashing down around her. The symbols etched on the walls glowed violently, and the chamber seemed to twist and shudder as though it were alive, retaliating against her intrusion. Her hired men, the rough laborers she had bribed to help her, shouted in panic. Their voices echoed through the chamber as the ceiling groaned and dust filled the air. Amina's ears rang with the sound of stone grinding against stone, the rumble vibrating through her very bones. She looked at the men, hoping to see them face the danger with her, but terror had consumed them. Without a word, they turned and fled, abandoning the tools, the lanterns, and her to the wrath of the collapsing chamber. "Wait! Don't leave!" she screamed, but the words were swallowed by the roar of the collapsing stone. The men did not hesitate. Their feet pounded against the stone stairs as they disappeared into the darkness above, leaving her alone. Her chest tightened, her lungs burning from the dust-filled air. She was trapped, cornered, with only the treasure that had turned to fiery sand and the crumbling chamber pressing against her from all sides. Amina stumbled, trying to flee, but the floor shifted beneath her feet. A jagged stone sliced into her leg, sending a sharp, agonizing pain up to her hip. Her clothes caught on a protruding rock, ripping at her sleeves and skirt. Her hands, blistered from the burning sand, fumbled desperately at the walls for support. The ceiling groaned, then collapsed in sections, stones crashing around her with bone-jarring force. Each step was agony, each breath a struggle as dust filled her lungs, choking her, making her cough and gasp. The once majestic chamber that had promised her glory now became a tomb. She crawled, limped, and scrambled, every movement a battle against the rocks, the dust, and the fiery remnants of the treasure. The golden sand hissed and popped on the floor, consuming everything it touched. It was no longer a prize. It was a weapon, a curse exacting its punishment for her greed and arrogance. Amina's mind raced as she sought any path to escape. She remembered the stairway that had brought her down, and with sheer determination, she pulled herself toward it, dragging her injured leg behind her. Stones fell around her, a symphony of destruction, and she felt one heavy chunk slam against her shoulder, knocking her forward. Pain exploded through her body, but still she pressed on, her eyes wide, burning with a mix of fear and stubborn defiance. Finally, she emerged from the chamber into the ruins above. The night air hit her like a wall, cold and suffocating, but it was freedom. Her breaths came in harsh, rasping gasps as she collapsed against the jagged stones. Her skin was scorched, her clothes torn, and her body bruised and bleeding. Every muscle screamed, her legs weak and battered from the frantic scramble. Yet she was alive, barely. Amina looked back at the ruins, smoke curling from the underground chamber, a faint glow of embers still visible where the treasure had been. The treasure, her dream, her obsession, was gone. Burned to ash, consumed by a force she could not comprehend. She sank to the ground, her hands clutching at her scorched arms, her chest heaving. She had risked everything, her health, her dignity, her family, and now she had nothing. By dawn she returned to the village. The path felt longer than she remembered, every step a fresh reminder of her injuries and humiliation. Dirt and dust coated her from head to toe, her hair matted, her clothes in tatters. She stumbled into the village square, greeted by stunned silence. Villagers who had whispered about her obsession now stared openly, their eyes wide with a mixture of pity and judgment. Mothers pulled children close, elders shook their heads, and even her younger sister, Amira, stared at her with confusion and sorrow. No one spoke at first, and Amina did not offer words. She could feel the weight of every eye upon her, the silent accusation that only greed and arrogance could summon. Her mother's gaze was the most painful of all, filled with disappointment, fear, and love that could no longer reach the daughter who had betrayed her. Safia appeared at the edge of the crowd, silent but unmistakably present, eyes glistening with tears, her expression a mix of sorrow and relief that Amina had survived, but dread for the destruction she had brought upon herself. Amina stood in the square empty-handed, humiliated, a living testament to the ruin that greed could create. She tried to lift her head, to hold herself with pride, but the villager's stares cut deeper than any stone from the collapsing chamber ever could. She had sought glory, wealth, and power, and in the end, all she had gained was pain, isolation, and the harsh lesson of humility imposed by a curse she had awakened herself. The village, once a backdrop to her ambition, now seemed alien and unwelcoming. Her friends and family, those she had betrayed for her obsession, watched her from a distance. Whispers rippled through the crowd like a wind sweeping through dry grass. This is what greed brings. This is what obsession costs. Each word, though unspoken directly to her, pierced her soul. Amina sank to the ground, finally unable to stand, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She could not escape the truth that now enveloped her. She had reached for the heights of fortune and been cast down, stripped of dignity, scarred by her own desires. The treasure that had consumed her mind and heart was gone, replaced by ashes and ruin. And the village, the people who had once loved her, now saw her only as a warning, a woman undone by her own unrelenting greed. The ruin she never expected was not just the destruction of the chamber, not just the loss of wealth, it was the ruin of her soul, of her pride, and of every relationship she had held dear. In that moment, covered in dirt, bruised and broken, Amina finally understood the full measure of what she had risked, and what she had lost.